Hi there, let's go back to 2019 for just a second. Tech stacks were getting unmanageable. Then the pandemic hit and tech blew up. New applications were coming out everywhere. The average company has 200 plus applications in their tech stack, and that's an issue. How should you go about consolidating your tech stack and thinking about what tech you should be using? Doug and Jess address the frustrations of large tech stacks and give their insight on how you can better utilize your tech here on the RevOps show.
Jess.
Doug, you all right?
I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little tired.
Sounds like it. It's gonna be fun.
So, Jess, one of my favorite comic bits. I never saw it, but I've heard about it. Larry David walks out. He's headlining. He's the headliner for some night at some comedy club. Walks out, looks at the audience, says, "Never mind." Walks off the stage. Doesn't come back out.
And that's the whole bit. That's the whole set.
That was. Yeah. So I'm thinking, what about a podcast episode where we just take a nap?
Okay, let's do it. Bye, Doug.
Bye. That's not an episode.
Oh, you want to take a nap on here? Yeah, no.
Yeah, we just take an episode. Like the podcast episode is
just us snoring.
Doug and Jess napping.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I think
you don't think?
I think that's a great idea.
Performance art, Jess.
Yeah, I gotcha. I think you just want to take a nap.
You don't seem very excited by this idea. Well, that's what you get for scheduling this at like what is it, like 5:30 in the morning on Monday?
Okay, you know what? Someone asked me to move it. This was the time I could do.
Jess, you're supposed to have my back.
I do have your back, Doug.
So what are you doing? Like, everyone can figure out that I was the one that requested to move this.
I'm not saying I didn't want to move it. I'm just saying the request came in to move it, and this was the time I was available.
This was the time. Well, hey, is there anything that could be more exciting than a day that we're not supposed to be at work and we're recording an episode of the RevOps show? I mean, it doesn't get better than that, Jess.
No. You should be excited because you're. See, I thought you would be energized by this because you're starting your week off with RevOps show.
But technically, the week doesn't start until
tomorrow.
Right?
Technically, no, but
See, this is why you need RevOps. You need somebody to figure this stuff out.
You need somebody to figure out what the first day of the week is. I think that's been figured out for us for a while, Doug.
Well, no one told me.
Okay, well.
Jess?
Yes.
So, are you more excited than the last time we recorded?
About Disney or about what?
Is there anything else?
I'm very excited. I've started my planning. I've started my strategy. Very excited.
Can you do my planning and strategy for me?
I thought I was doing your planning for you.
So what are you most looking forward to?
What am I?
I know what the real answer is.
I'm most looking forward to the day that I'm going to be there before everybody else gets there, that I'm going to the park. That's what I'm most looking forward to. Including
who else is not going to be there? Your kids don't listen to the show, do they?
No, they yeah, I'm by myself, no kids, no husband. Yeah, it's going to be amazing. I am most looking forward to that. I haven't tried to hide that at all. Everyone knows I'm excited about that.
So is there any ride that you're going to do that you couldn't do or you wouldn't do if you were a family?
No. So Isabella rides everything. She loves roller coasters. So
does she want to do that roller coaster in the Rockies?
In the Rockies? You mean?
Remember that video that I shared with you?
Oh, that one? Yeah, she'd totally do that. She'd 100% do that. I know you would.
Yeah, I would not. I don't think I would get within. I think I have a restraining. I think it has a restraining order. Like, it's not allowed within 1,000 feet of me.
I mean, drinking around the world is the ride I'm going to do that I wouldn't normally do if I was with them. So there's that.
You don't drink around the world when you're with a family?
I think we did it once and we might have made it to China. Like, we attempted it once and we might have made it to China. That's that third country for those of you not well versed in the World's Showcase.
That's not very far, Jess.
No.
See, I would think going with kids, being at Disney with your kids would drive you to drink around the world.
You would think it would, but they distract you.
Yeah.
They also are not like enthused by the World's Showcase. There's not a lot of rides on that side of the park.
See, the last time I drank around the world, we didn't get there, so it was part of it was part of a conference, for lack of a better word. And so we had to drink around the world fast. As a matter of fact, when we got to the last, I forget which the last showcase is.
It's either Canada or Mexico, depending on where you started.
Okay, so we got to Mexico, and they had just closed.
Yeah. See, it's hard it is actually hard to do if you don't get there early, from what I understand.
And we were like, come on, this is the last kind. And they finally, like, one person, okay, here you go. They get basically, I think we got a shot at tequila or something. Now, what we did basically was we ordered a drink in the country and walked to the next country as we were drinking the drink. Ordered, went.
Yeah. So
we were hosting the event. It was back when in our travel, and I was the MC, by the way.
Of course you were.
It was. I'm not gonna lie. It was a hard morning the next morning.
Yeah, I'd imagine. 11 countries. 11 countries.
And I think it was like 2 hours or like 2 hours, 90 minutes. Like it was 2 hours. 2 hours. Yeah, it was.
No.
It was hard.
No, thank you.
I think we can do it, Jess. I think we can do it.
So I'm going to regret saying that drinking around the world is the ride I'm riding, because I don't know that I'm going to do that, to be honest.
You're not going to drink around I thought we were drinking around the world.
So I'll have a drink and you can have a drink and then Ash can have a drink. And that's how we can drink around the world.
All right, we're not letting the team's not hanging out with us?
If the team wants to do it, that's cool. But I think that's how the three of us should drink around the world.
So I have a drink.
Then so you can have a drink in Mexico, then I can have a drink in Norway, and then Ash can have a drink in China.
Norway, and then Ash has a drink in China, and I have a drink in China.
Yeah, you guys can do that if you want. I'm just going to do every third country. So I'm not miserable.
I don't know. I think I'm nice when I'm hungover. I think people like me when I'm hungover.
I don't know.
Comment. You've seen me hungover, haven't you?
I have. You're your regular self, just a little more ornery.
Am I ornery?
A little bit.
I thought I was just.
You're quiet.
I would have said I'm quieter. Yeah,
you're quiet. Very quiet. A little more ornery. Little.
You saying I'm a little more ogre-y? Is that what you're saying?
That's not what I said.
Ogre-ish? Are you saying that I growl? Is that what you're saying?
Sometimes you do.
Sometimes. There we go. All right, Jess, what are we talking about today? What's the
today?
What's the topic du jour?
Today we're going to talk about tech stack.
Do you see what I did there?
I did. I did because World Showcase. We're going to talk about tech stack consolidation.
What number pavilion is France?
Depending on which way you go. So you have Canada, UK, France. So it's either number 3.
Well, you said Norway was after. You said Norway.
So Norway's second. Mexico, Norway, China.
Hold on.
Japan.
When we were talking about drinking around the world, you said Canada.
Japan's not
so I'd have one in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have one.
I said Mexico, Norway, China. That's if you go left. If you go right, it is Canada, UK, France. So France is either the third pavilion if you're going counterclockwise. If you're going clockwise, France is the 9th pavilion.
Okay, thank you. Alrighty.
Anyway, tech stack consolidation. So you picked this topic. I was curious why you wanted to talk about tech stack consolidation, Doug.
I'm supposed to have a reason for.
I'm just curious if something.
Well, we had to talk about something, Jess. So
okay, great.
I went to my Wheel of RevOps show. I spun it, and it came to consolidate your tech stack. No, it's something that we've been talking about for, probably about. Actually, it goes back to 2019. You know how I know it goes back to 2019?
Because you found the slide that you put together in 2019 on it.
No, because I remember talking about the SaaSification and SaaS bloat with Brian Halligan at Partner Day. And there hasn't been a Partner Day where, that was separate from Inbound since before 2020. So that's how I was able to figure out it's not. So it's my deductive powers of reasoning. Yeah, so I remember talking with Brian Halligan, who was the CEO at HubSpot at the time, about how tech stacks are just getting unmanageable. Then the pandemic hit, and holy cow, they were like, I mean, you want to talk about the mushroom effect. And you think about the MarTech ecosystem map. Depending upon what data you look at, the average company has 200 or some SaaS applications, right? And it might be a little bit fresh because I'm working on closing the year for last year, and I got to see firsthand it all added up. What we paid for our tech stack last year, holy cow! So it's something that is. I'm seeing more people talking about it as an issue. I'm seeing it show up on surveys more. I'm seeing. I mean, Lord knows. I think I've shared some frustration. I mean, I don't typically share frustrations on the show. I try to keep that separate from.
Yep.
I mean, I try to be very, very positive about everything on the RevOps show. But I think from time to time, frustration has emerged as all these applications keep striving to be more than what you bought them for. And I know when we're working, as we're working with companies, just managing, getting the juice for the squeeze from the tech stack is less than a foregone conclusion.
Yep. So you brought up.
My question is, I don't know that it's related to consolidation, but my question is, there's no question that tech eliminates friction. But my question is, does it end up creating more friction than it eliminates?
Yeah.
I think far too often it does.
Yep. You talked about the mushroom effect. So can you explain what that is and talk a little bit about that?
Just, I mean, SaaS applications, it was like bunny rabbits. I mean, holy cow, you went to sleep one night, there were 100 apps. The next night in the market, there were like 1,000. Then there's 10. I mean, it's just, I think we're seeing a slowdown. A lot of news out about, I mean, there's consolidation within the industry. Vista combined. It was. I love the headline: SalesLoft acquires Drift. By the way, I loved what Drift said. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be picking on Drift. This is SaaS marketing. This is SaaS marketing at its finest. We're excited about the events of today. This is from Drift. As we continue to move to make Drift a sustaining something or other. I'm like, well, wait, huh? You Drift just ended today. Like, you just sold. So I didn't understand.
Yeah.
Just, but it was announced as SalesLoft acquired Drift. The funny thing, not funny, haha, is both SalesLoft and Drift are owned majority by Vista partners. So basically they just decided to combine them.
Yep.
Yeah. So the mushrooming is just like, you didn't get arithmetic growth. You got exponential plus growth of applications as just more and more and more and more came about. And I think it was driven. There was just so much money in the market. And the thing about applications, I mean, the problem, I don't mean to get overly philosophical here, but one of the opportunities and challenges when you look at digital is the restraint isn't people. It's not even really capital, because you can duplicate so much. Like, you can't take a part of the factory that you already built in Cincinnati and say, hey, you know what, we're gonna clone that for the factory in Minneapolis. Whereas with code, you can, so we just saw this just insane level of growth in number of applications, and with all the PLG, free this, free that, just a massive increase in applications available in the market, in overlap of functionality, in what people had in a tech stack. That's what I mean by the mushrooming. So
what has the impact of that been on organizations? I mean, obviously, more available is going to make the decision difficult, but like, what are some of the impacts of that of
So
that
Jess,
mushroom
it
effect.
may surprise you. It may surprise you to learn. I did some research for this episode.
I'm shocked.
So I wrote a really interesting article in Harvard Business Review. The average worker today changes or switches between applications and websites 1,200 times per day.
Oh wow. That's wild.
And they shared I mean this strikes me as a little bit of an extreme, but I wasn't shocked by it. They
Yeah.
shared an example to execute a single supply chain transaction at a company. And this is not a nothing company. Each person involved switched about 350 times between 22 different applications and unique websites. One of the problems of it is there's so much time lost in, you spend more time managing the application than managing the process. Like the whole point of buying technology is do more with less.
Mm-hmm.
But our costs per keep going up. That's my question, is for all the friction that it solves, are we, and the way that we're doing it, are we creating more friction than we're solving? And the other thing, it's becoming increasingly confusing, because here again, every SaaS application unfortunately is battling for your wallet, battling for wallet share. And so one of the things that's become increasingly evident is to be a sustainable SaaS product, especially if you're talking about it from a funded perspective, you need to be a multi-product SaaS company, which means, you come in, so the whole strategy is you come in with one point, right? Like, I don't want to pick on app companies. So we get a piece of software that records and transcribes calls.
Yep.
Right. Then it starts saying, oh, you can schedule your appointments. Oh, you can track your pipeline. Oh, you can do this. Oh, you can do this. And so they start adding more and more things to it.
Functionality.
Now, outside of the fact that I think that one of the problems, I mean, look at Zoom. Zoom used to be, the whole point of Zoom, it was easy. You didn't have to think about it. It was seamless. I mean, the number of times I'm having to click out of things, change things, etc., with them because they want to be more and more and more and more. But the danger, as an example, with the first one is, I, as a company, let's say that we're not having that friction problem. It's very hard, or you have to spend a lot of time and attention so that people within your company don't start using other features. Right. And so there used to be something, I think there still is something, but the term, the shadow stack, used to be a very common term. The shadow stack is, what are the pieces of technology that people in your company are using that you don't know about?
Yeah.
So we build out this beautiful tech stack, integrating the right applications with this. And then somebody's in your, they're looking at a call recording and they go, oh, I can keep track of my deals over here. Oh, I think this is pretty cool. And suddenly they start using that. And now your primary system's not being used like it's supposed to be. There's data in another place. Last year, more than 3,000 data breach incidents on corporate, on provider services, impacting more than $353 million. So every time you open up, like every time you add an application, you're adding a vulnerability. And then if you connect it, like, I don't even have to get into your primary system necessarily.
Right.
And so all those things come in, and it's just it's just creating a whole lot of chaos. And not to mention a whole lot of cost. Right? Average company in 2022, average company spent $2,600 on SaaS per employee per year.
That's wild.
Right. And I think when you go into your sales and marketing segments, I think that number, when you narrow it down to that employee base, I think the number is higher. I think it's probably significant. I think it's probably twice as high.
Yeah.
For the average company. And let's go back to my example of, whether it's Zoom or this other company. I said I was going to pick on any companies, but Zoom, they're big enough to be able to pick on. one of the difficulties is as they're adding more and more, which frankly creates more friction for me. They're not. I'm still paying the same thing, and what's clear to me is my expense is now going into things that I don't want. So
Right.
even though, what do you care, Doug? As long as it just works here. I mean, I certainly believe that you don't measure an application on the percentage of its features that you're using or how many features you're using, right? If you have 300 features and I use one, but that one drives real business value, then who cares?
Sure.
But as I'm, what again, what's happening is the investment in my core use. So like my investment is getting bigger. Just anybody look at your SaaS bills. And by the way, I think we've seen over the last 12 to 18 months, I think we've seen a nice little bump in the average cost of it. And I don't think that rate of increase, let me just say this. I believe that the cost of your technology is going to far outpace inflation over the next 24 months.
Yep.
And the question is that money going back into the key uses that you need? Because, I mean, if you think about it, that's what the whole point of SaaS is supposed to be for the customer.
Yeah.
Right? Is I have a subscription, so it's my product's always being improved. I don't have to, and I don't know if that's as true as it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that there's always been a buyer beware component, but I think now it's if you're not controlling your tech stack is controlling you. And I also think it this aspect of, I mean, the costs have gotten large enough, especially to that, like, it's a real number now. I think it's always been there, but it was kind of like, yeah, it's just not, the impact's not big enough for the attention required. I think that is changing. And by the way, a lot of things I think are, the promises of every feature being a game changer. Maybe the game hasn't changed as much, and so I think that's kind of where.
So what should the approach be, or what should you consider as you're kind of trying to navigate this bloated tech space?
Well, I think that the first thing you have to do is ask yourself the question: what are you using technology for?
Mm-hmm.
I think using tech is so obvious to so many people that we never actually know why we're using it. The thing to realize is everything is a technology. So I don't need a SaaS application for everything. There can be elements of my business process where I don't have something called tech in there. Like, for example, there's a lot of functionality out there that people are jumping into applications for, paying a monthly fee. And the truth is, they could probably do it better, faster, and easier with a spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what are you buying technology for? What is the job of technology? I think the important decision that somebody has to make is what's their platform. Like, I think you do have to look at in each area, and obviously we're going to be talking about sales, marketing. We're focused on the go-to-market side, so that's where I'm going to limit my conversation. But I think this applies to operations, finance, human resources, etc. Is you have to decide what is the platform approach that you're going to take. So I think every business discipline, every business motion, every meta motion, that'd be a good name for like a Marvel movie, don't you think? Meta motion. Who could be the evil? Who could be the bad guy? The
bad guy in that.
In meta motion. I think every meta motion needs to determine what is what's our platform. Now, there is a possibility that you could choose. You could say, look, we want a single platform for the company. I probably would not do that. Certainly not in the market.
Yeah.
But the platform is going to be the center of what you do. It's going to serve your core.
Yep.
Your core need and how you choose that platform will determine an awful lot about how broad your tech stack will be. Now, unless you're looking at something where that platform is core to your competitive advantage. It is core to your pure differentiation. Again, I'm talking about for mid-market companies. Let's call this, 500 to 5,000 employees.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, less than that, even more so. But
Yep.
unless it's core to what makes you unique,
Mm-hmm.
then I think you should lean towards a platform that provides, that in essence enables you to consolidate. Right?
Yeah.
It provides functionality that goes beyond just its core use.
Mm-hmm.
So, like that's HubSpot's position versus, say, a Salesforce position.
Right.
Salesforce is a super strong platform, but in and of itself, it's got relatively limited direct capability. You could do a billion different things with it.
Right.
But you have to, you're going to have more applications in your tech stack on a Salesforce implementation than you will on a HubSpot implementation.
Sure.
Or at least you should. By the way, I'm seeing people that are investing in HubSpot and then building tech stacks that look more like a Salesforce tech stack. And I always look at it and I go, I don't understand. Why are you doing this? So that's like that again. So that's kind of the platform. What's the approach going to be? By the way, the moment you choose your platform, you're also driving a whole lot of compatibility issues. Like the universe of product that you're going to see.
Right.
If you go Salesforce as an example, you're choosing an enterprise platform. And that means that you're going to have a broader universe of applications to choose from. But you're going to have larger, bigger applications, like who's building for Salesforce. You're going to tend to see that those application providers, they're going to skew more enterprise. If you go HubSpot, it's an SMB platform moving up. And if you take a look at those applications that have, been built on Salesforce and are now beginning to build for HubSpot, there's no question that what they're building for HubSpot is a very secondary market to them. The way they conceive their product roadmap, the way they manage that is much more enterprise. So again, it's going to give you a different, like that platform decision has a whole bunch of implications down the road. The next thing, as I said, is you need to figure out where you're buying, what are you buying technology for? I said that earlier, but this gets into, there are certain places where, like what are the key areas where technology is really going to make a difference? So as an example, if I'm a very high volume, a high transaction, large sales team, large inside sales team, we're doing 90% of our business on the phone or on Zooms or things like that, then call recording, interpretation to call coaching, performance management, etc. That might be a place where I say, you know what, we really need to be exceptional there.
Right.
Because if we can make a 1 point performance difference with our sales team, makes $100 million, has $100 million impact, or maybe even a $10 million impact, then you're looking at that. If 70% of my sales are happening in the field, if I've got a team of 50 salespeople or something like that, then call recording is valuable. Call coaching is always very valuable. But like, do you need the best there, or do you just need that core function? Right. If you try to be the best, if you try to have an application that's the best at everything, I hope you have a lot of money and you're going to be wasting probably 2/3 of it, because you don't need to be the best in every single application. So you're looking at that. Where are the key functionalities? And it's kind of like when you're shopping, like if you think about platform, this is going to be a really bad analogy, but it's kind of like when you're looking at insurance, right? you take a look at who are your key doctors and you go, are they on my insurance plan?
Yeah.
Right. You don't look at every doctor that you may need to decide, is that who I want? But like if my general practitioner, if my OBGYN, like those, like if are those on the plan? Okay, fine. Then we go. So like that's where like, so you might want to choose, hey, this is really important. So even when you're looking at the that might be a place where you go beyond the platform when you're making that decision to say, how do these pieces play into that?
Yep.
Which leads to compatibility,
Mm-hmm.
right? How do these play with each other?
Yep.
The number of times I've come in and I've seen different applications, we've got a multi-application, multiple point solution, and I don't want to say every one of them because that's probably an exaggeration, but a significant number, 3, 4, 5 of the applications have fundamentally different data structures.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's clearly a place where you would generate productivity and velocity by giving up fidelity for compatibility.
Yeah.
How's this system? How's it gonna operate as a unified system? This again goes back to why I think the platform is the first choice that you make, because this might be a topic for another episode. It would get very esoteric. It would get very nuanced and potentially technical really fast.
Mm-hmm.
But syncing applications is not the same thing as a truly connected or unified system. It is going beyond just a sync. There's an orchestration. How does the data play with each other? And you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yep. I do.
I mean, because at the end of the day, syncing is, you're mapping properties. Yep, that data goes here. Yep, but there is some, there's a business motion beyond that.
Yep.
That needs to be understood, and also how is the data being used? How is it? The other thing I see as a mistake is we often we telescope into these 2 or 3 systems, right? But we've got to take a look at what's the domino effect to, how does it go through the other systems that may have nothing to do with your go-to-market motion?
Well, so there's that, and again, probably more for another episode, but what are the requirements of those systems for that data to flow between them? Because how many times have we gotten into something where 2 technologies have been purchased, and then we find out there's a requirement to get data from system A to system B, and that requirement isn't necessarily met. And so figuring that out, there's that added layer of complexity when you're talking about data connection between systems.
Well, and you have another problem when you start, especially as you go broader in your number of applications. If you build a whole bunch of one-to-one syncs, the problem that you have is system A and B are syncing, system A and C are syncing, system A and D are syncing, but then suddenly the sync between A and D causes A and B to sync something, even though it already synced and it wasn't, and you end up. So the real question is how do you build, that's what we're building with our data management services is how do we, here's where it comes down to. Here's the fundamental problem with how organizations manage multiple systems with data. And that is they're managing the systems.
Yeah.
They're managing the connection between systems. And what you need to do is you need to manage the record. How do you create a unified record?
Yep.
And so that record is kept clear, and everything that's impacted, this record is this record, rather than, because if you sync, it's still 2 records.
Yep.
And if there's a third system, it becomes 3 records. And so what happens is they tell 2 friends, and they tell 2 friends, and so on, and so on, and so on. And then we go, our fill in the blank doesn't work.
Right.
It's no, it's working fine. It's that whole, it's the back end. And then the last consideration is user experience. And I don't want to say that's the last consideration, like it's the least important consideration. in so many ways, it is the most important. Like, how is someone supposed to use this?
Yeah.
Right. And that's why you cannot effectively manage your tech if you're not effectively managing your business process.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So those are the considerations. So what's the process that you go through as you're making a decision?
I'm supposed to know that answer.
You are, Doug.
What are you doing this for? That's the first thing. What are you doing this for? What are the outcomes? And how do the technology outcomes connect to the business outcomes?
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, yeah.
I ask people all the time. So, you're looking at implementing a new CRM. We're 1 year into the new CRM. Like your full implementation. You're 1 year into it. How do you know it was successful? Well, the data would be connected to our other data.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. I get it. What is that going to enable you to do? And more importantly than what is that going to enable you to do, what are you unable to do because
it doesn't work? Yeah.
Well, no, not if it doesn't work. What are you right now? You don't have that.
Right.
So what's the business outcome that you're not able to get?
Gotcha.
Because of that. See, when you define where your shortcomings are, when you define your gaps, what you'll find is multiple gaps can likely be addressed with one solve.
Yeah.
Whereas if like data connected, our data is not connected is a symptom. Because by the way, all of our data is not connected.
I know.
And that's right. But that's the right thing.
I know.
Because the cost of connection would be far greater. And it's like, that's okay. Right.
And cost is financial and like people cost as well, like time when you're talking about costs. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, you would think that as you get bigger and you have more transactions, you'd have more insanity. You have more.
Yep.
But the thing that's interesting is when you're smaller, you have more one-offs than when you're larger. Because to a large, like you can't get to very large with one-offs, right? There has to be. Right. And so the other issue is like whenever you're connecting something, you're creating automation. And look, we make this mistake repeated times per year. We identify an area where using automation seems like the right thing to do. And we over automate, and suddenly we're now having to unwind things because, oh wait, this ended up being, it wasn't quite the same thing. It was a little bit different. I mean, I remember I did this. I mean, one of the places where we're not fully connected is invoicing. It drives me crazy. I hate it. And I remember one time we tried to, like, and I hate. I mean, boy, that was I don't want to talk about that one. That gives me.
We're giving Doug anxiety at the very beginning of the week.
Right. Right. So again, what are the outcomes? And follow the prime directive.
Yep.
Business process must drive the technology. What's the business process?
Yeah.
And here again, like I still see this, and I'm going to see this in a year. I'm going to see it in 3 years. I'm going to see it in 5 years. I'm going to see it in 10 years, and it's still going to drive me crazy. And that is, tech application comes on and says, with fill in the blank, you do without having to. And by the way, this whole with AI. With our application, you don't have to think, and it will. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to tell you, if the promise to you is you don't have to think, you might want to look for something else. There's nothing. I don't know. Maybe in the future something something will replace our thinking and will think better than us, but the stuff ain't there now. Can it aid? Absolutely, it can aid. Once you've got your bands in place. But if you're not clear on what that business process is, if that business process, if you're taking things and hey, here's the out of the box ABC with our forecasting module, it will X.
Yep.
Okay, you're gonna have shitty forecasting. Does that mean the forecasting is going to be inaccurate? Not necessarily, because what you project you get, but are you going to be like Here's the thing. Here's what I know. You don't make money on accurate forecasting. You make money on revenue. Are you optimizing your revenue? I'm not trying to optimize forecasting. I'm trying to optimize revenue. Forecasting, as long as forecasting is, aligned and driving that, then we're good. So again, like the lead has to lead. So number one, define your outcomes. Number two, map your processes. Be clear on your business processes. Then the third is audit your current tech stack. And you should be auditing your tech stack once a year and reviewing it semi-annually to quarterly.
Okay.
Now, if you audit your tech stack right the first time, you can create the construct so that doing that on an ongoing basis doesn't have to be super time consuming. But it is reviewing, what do we have? Why did we get it? How are we using it? What functionality has changed? Because you maybe had two applications that you got 2 years ago because legitimately they did different things, and you can now do the same with one.
Yep.
And by the way, I think that that's a huge RevOps issue, because the problem is, more often than not, that doesn't become evident until it becomes urgent.
Yep.
And so someone comes in and says, we need to cut our tech spending, right? That's the wrong reason,
right,
to consolidate your tech stack. That's a great benefit of consolidating your tech stack, but it's the wrong reason. So you come in and now we have two different applications that are being used that could be done with one. So we say, get rid of this, use this one, but we haven't given it the proper consideration for, okay, so what do we have to do from a user experience standpoint? And other elements, because they're not going to do it the exact same way. So again, that's a perfect thing to fit into, your enablement zone for where you're moving forward. So audit your tech stack.
Yep.
Think about what's the job. Use jobs to be done. Don't forget that you're not making the decision about your ERP, but you need to be keeping your even from a RevOps standpoint, what's the non-direct tech stack? What are the applications that are being impacted by our existing tech stack? Identify the overlaps, the gaps, and the conflicts. Prioritize. What are the key issues? Here's what I'm going to tell you. The best tech, the simplest tech stack that gets the job done is the best tech stack. Right?
Yeah.
So prioritize what's going to give you the most juice for the squeeze. Build your roadmap. Build your tech stack roadmap. Think about what needs to be done now, what needs to be prepared for, what's the long term, and then implement. And kind of repeat that every 3, 6, 12 months. And what you'll find is the repeat will take less and less effort.
Yep.
You'll drive better outcomes, and you'll fight SaaS bloat.
Yep. I think one thing too on what you were talking about around the decision shouldn't be made necessarily because we need to cut tech spend, like that shouldn't be the driver. I think the other thing too, if you're mindful with how you're reviewing these things and you've got a reasoning, say these two tools now do the same thing, the users of those tools will feel less like you've taken something away from them. Because if it's to cut spending, they're going to feel like, oh, well, that I now don't have that thing that I had. Versus if it's been given, a thoughtful, meaningful review and a conversation's been had and you kind of have your reasoning about why you're reducing that, it now doesn't feel like I've taken something away so much.
That's interesting. And I hadn't even considered that, and I get it. It's not the type of thing that I would normally get. Right. But I'm not dealing with it. I don't deal with the users on a day-to-day basis like you do.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me, so what comes to mind when we talk about that is, like, what I want to say is, like, never give your tech a name. Never give the application a name.
Like naming a puppy.
Exactly. Right? Because the moment you give the puppy a name, it ain't leaving.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's an example of the tech leading the business process, not the business process leading the tech, right? I mean, look, I get this whole thing about are we a team? Are we a family? The truth is, it's a little bit of both.
Yep.
But gosh darn it, isn't the reason that we get tech, we can be cold-hearted with tech. We don't have to give tech a severance package. We don't have to, you know what I mean? It's like, so
yeah, I know.
When people understand that like, again, tech is not the solution, it's an enabler, it's a utility.
Right.
One of the key decisions that I used to talk about is you need to make a decision. Are you buying a toy or are you buying a tool?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like, hey, this is really cool. That's awesome that it's really cool. I mean, I've seen some people go, oh my God, that's a horrible UI. That's a horrible interface. You can't use that. I mean, typically when the interface is really bad, it's just a sign of other things that are bad. But
right.
It's like, okay, yeah, well, it's got a bad UI, but it's got a wonderful personality. What's the UI like? It's got a great personality.
Yeah.
And that's like, it's so like, I understand why something like, again, that's why, like, all of this together, what's the outcome that you're looking for? Like the number of people that get, hey, that's really cool. Hey, it's got a great UI, and no one ever uses it.
Yep. Cool. Aside from that, I've got a couple of takeaways.
I think the great personality, I think that's the takeaway from today.
That's the takeaway.
How's
great
the
personality?
Well, it's got a great personality.
Let's end it there. No. So you talked about, start asking yourself, what are you buying the technology for? The jobs to be done approach is one we always use and recommend when we're looking at tech stack. Choose your platform. That platform decision impacts your entire tech stack. I really liked how do the tech outcomes align to the business outcomes? Because I think we compartmentalize those things in our mind and we don't think about aligning that with the business outcome, and then auditing your tech stack once per year and reviewing it 2 to 4 times per year, staying on top of it. As you're doing that, it makes it easier to make these decisions.
A powerful question to ask about each application that you have in your tech stack is, if we couldn't have this application, what would we do, and would it make a difference?
Yeah, I think that's a great question.
I'm going to let you in on a secret. It's probably not that much of a secret. Here's what SaaS companies know. The hardest thing for them to do is to get in. Because once they're in your tech stack, they know that inertia will keep them there. All right. You need to fight tech stack inertia to have an efficient, effective tech stack. Jess, well, when it comes to tech, I think this is going to be, this has been an important area for RevOps. I think the management of tech, I think one of the big changes that has happened, that's going to be happening, is that we're going from RevOps being the lead in adding to the tech stack to like, if you really want to move to the front of the RevOps crowd, you're going to get better and better at being able to lead to how to consolidate, where and how to consolidate the tech stack. And remember, just say no to shitty RevOps.
Till next time.
And that's a wrap on this episode of the RevOps Show. Don't let your technology drive your business process. Be clear on your business processes and make sure you audit your current tech stack once a year while reviewing it semi-annually to quarterly. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to go subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Give us a rating and share the episode. If you have any questions you would like to ask Doug and Jess about your tech stack or tech stack in general, email me at hannah@liftenablement.com, hit us up on X @demandcreator, or LinkedIn @liftenablement. And until next time, say no to shitty RevOps.